Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 300 of the No Quit Living podcast. First of all, I have to say a very, very special thank you to all the listeners and everybody that has supported the show over the years. I honestly can't believe that we are already at episode number 300. I also need to say a very special thank you to Wes. He's my partner with the podcast, and he's the guy that does everything behind the scenes, including both the intro and the ending music. As today is a very special episode, number 300, I'm honored to have a very special guest join us for the second time. I'm sure most listeners know the positive impact that Jon Gordon has had not only on my personal life, but also professionally. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. Jon, I'd like to welcome you back to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, great to be back with you.
So first off, I have to congratulate you for not only one, but two books during this pandemic. You wrote the Garden, as well as your most recent book that you wrote with your wife, Relationship Grit. So kudos to you. I know many people talk about writing one book, and you did obviously over 20 now, but two within this pandemic. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was actually a crazy thing because we wrote the book, Relationship Grit, before the pandemic. And the same thing with The Garden. I actually wrote The Garden from December 25th to January 8th, not knowing a pandemic was coming. And yet it was the book that would really resonate with people during this time, talking about fear, stress, and anxiety. I think so often God knows what we're going to do before we do, or knows what's needed before we do. And it just is wild that I had two books come out during this time. And also with relationships struggling the way they are right now, and a lot of marriages falling apart and so forth. I think it's a great time for Relationship Grit to come out, especially now. And so our goal was to help hopefully save marriages. And in my case with The Garden, I want to save lives.
Yeah, no, and I think both of those books, to your point, came out at a perfect time. Wanted to ask you one thing. Your wife shared a quote on the podcast episode she was on with something that I thought was extremely powerful. Where there is a void, negativity will fill it. And I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just expanding on that for a minute.
Sure. Well, that came to me years ago when I was working with companies. I noticed that the more you had voids, negativity will fill those voids, right? Rumors and gossip and arguments and just a lot of negativity and bitterness. We assume the worst and we act accordingly. But when we fill those voids with communication, positive communication, and even sometimes when maybe it's not good news and we still have to share the real data, the real information, the real facts, and we have to share that. Maybe sometimes we have to let people go and it's not good news, but when you talk to people about it and they understand and you're very clear, you're transparent, you're honest, it's amazing how those voids do not breed negativity. So the more we communicate, the more we fill those voids, the less the negativity will breed and grow, the stronger the team and the stronger the organization will have. Same thing in relationships. And the funny thing is, even in my own team, the team I work with, we'll laugh about it because when we have voids, we wind up having issues, and we'll even notice the voids within our own communication framework.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful, and she had shared it, I think, 2 or 3 times on the podcast, and I've probably repeated it 20 times since then. I wanted to unpack something. When you and I originally met way back in 2017, when you were on the podcast the first time, I've heard you speak about positivity, and not in this Pollyanna fake perspective, but more so along the lines of trying to make the most or the best out of situations. And I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just discussing that, because I think the way you have talked about it is extremely powerful, not only in general, but especially during these difficult times.
When you do this work and you talk about positivity, you start to see a lot of people roll their eyes. They think that you're going to talk about seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. This is not about that. This is about seeing the world as it is, knowing that there's challenges, looking at the reality, but knowing that you have the power to overcome the thorns. And so you see the challenge, you see the issue, you see the reality of the situation, but you believe and you have the optimism and faith that you can overcome it. And so you're seeing the reality, but you believe you can create a better reality in the future. So we're in a place now where so many people think, oh, positivity or positive thinking means that you ignore the facts or you're not accurate. We even had a famous doctor the other day said he's not a fan of positive thinking. He's a fan of honesty and truth and accurate thinking. Well, why isn't what positivity is not accurate thinking? Of course it is. It's seeing the reality, it's seeing the challenge, but saying we can overcome. We have the optimism, we have the belief, we have the skill set that we can overcome. And maybe you don't have the skill set, but you're honest about that. And I'm going to work to get the skill set to overcome. And so it's a lot of optimism. It's a lot of belief. It's a lot of understanding that to lead, I must lead with people. I must develop great relationships. I must build positive teams, and that together we will succeed. We will create the future by being positive together. And that's where the power is. So I get a little frustrated, to be honest, as you could probably tell from how I'm answering this, when I see all these people talk about positive thinking in that way. And maybe there's people out there that have created this. Maybe there's people who have that, pie in the sky thinking. They have that rose-colored glasses thinking. They do ignore the reality. And they're telling people, oh, just ignore the facts. Oh, just don't believe it. Don't look at it. But I'm a big believer in looking at it and knowing that you have the power to overcome.
I think that's so powerful, and the first thing you said is you see the challenge and you acknowledge it, but it's still then going ahead, and you talked about relationships and people and communicating, so I'm glad you touched on that. A couple weeks ago, you shared something on social media that I wanted to repeat, if it's okay with you, and ask you to kind of get your perspective on it, because it's something that I think is extremely powerful. In your post, you said, when I speak to college athletes, I tell them 20 years from now, you're not going to wish you would have spent more time on social media or played more Fortnite or partied more. 20 years from now, you'll wish you have devoted yourself to being the best you can be.
I would agree with that 100%. I wrote that, obviously, and I believe that. I also should add to that, again, you can't say everything in one tweet, but I would add to that, developing relationships with the people that you are spending time with, relationships with your teammates if you're an athlete. Having played sports in college, I still have connections and relationships with the people I played with, and those relationships have endured. I'm going to see my friends in the future. We're going to all get together, and we're going to have a great trip together. We're actually planning something now. And so for me, it's about the relationships you develop and the person you become. So don't waste time being distracted. Don't waste life focusing on the things that don't matter. Video games, Instagram, all these things that keep you from being your best. Because as a college athlete who played lacrosse at Cornell University, one of my biggest regrets was that I did not give everything that I could to be the best that I could be. I allowed distractions. I allowed parties. I allowed girlfriends to get in the way of really being my best. And I look back and it really is a regret because I know that I could have been better, and yet it wasn't my focus. So I think so often we think things seem like they're important. They look bright and shiny, and those bright and shiny things are appealing to us at the time, but it just serves as a distraction, keeping us from being all that we're meant to be.
I think that's such a powerful concept, and I'm glad you expanded on it, because I think it is something that even in today's day and age, and not only just college athletes, but even people that are professionals, it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, the Instagram, the Twitter, those things are not going to be as important as working on yourself. And as you said before, working on your relationships and communication. So I'm really glad you touched on that. A question we did not ask early on in the podcast when you were a guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what word would you pick?
Well, my life word is positive because it's what I strive to be, but I would not say it's ultimately who I am. It's something I'm actually becoming. I'm always working on being positive. It's my life's work. If I had to define myself, I would have to say contagious. Someone defined me that the other day, and I don't mean with the flu or the COVID. I mean positively contagious. It's funny, a team my team got together and they created a book for me just recently. And it was a really nice book of all these letters that they wrote me. And they all picked a word for me and how they would describe me, that one word. And it was a really great book that brought me to tears just reading some of the things and how I've led them and impacted them and believed in them. Many of these are now speakers and consultants and trainers. And it was really a nice thing to see and a nice thing to read. But they picked these words for me, and many were authentic and positive and contagious and passionate, encouraging. I guess if I had to pick one after just talking about this with you, thanks for the therapy, Chris, I would say it's encouraging, because I really know that I love to encourage people. And it's something I really focused on during this time of COVID, to really be a source of encouragement. I knew this was my mission. This was my focus. And I was going to actually start doing that ever since March in a deeper, more powerful way.
So speaking on that, wanted to get your perspective is if you could possibly recommend one or two people that you follow on social media that really put out that same type of encouraging and positive message that maybe our listeners could follow as well.
Wow. So many great followers. I love, I love Donald Miller. Donald Miller is a speaker and a writer, someone I just love. John Acuff makes me laugh all the time. Matthew West is a musician, but he posts some great stuff. Danny Goki, another musician that's really great. Emmanuel Acho has written some great things and promoted some great things recently about having difficult conversations of race. He actually is writing a book coming out with the support of Oprah called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. He's been a great follow as well. Inky Johnson is awesome. I love Inky, and he's a friend. Damon West, my co-author of The Coffee Bean, is always promoting a lot of great stuff. So many great sources of encouragement out there. Jason Romano with Sports Spectrum is always posting really great stuff and encouragement as well.
I love that word, going back to what you said, encouragement. And I think it's something that, to your point, those people, and I follow quite a few of them, not all of them, but when you see their messages and mission and you see it's genuine and it's encouraging and it's meant to lift people up. And I think we too at No Quit Living during these times, we've really focused on trying to be positive, trying to be encouraged, knowing that it's just a really challenging time. If I could have the opportunity to grant you dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Yeah, I heard you ask my wife the same question. And it's
she didn't say you, by the way.
She didn't say me. Of course it wouldn't be me. I bet she said her father, right?
Yes.
So for me, I would say definitely my parents. I would like to have one more dinner with them. It would definitely be probably spaghetti and meatballs. My dad was Italian, or my mom was Jewish, so it might be spaghetti and matzo balls. But it was it would be a meal with them, probably eggplant parmesan and baked ziti, sitting down and having dinner with my parents. It would definitely be with them.
That's awesome.
They're both gone. My mom passed away 14 years ago,
wow.
And my dad passed away 3 years now, going towards 4. It's like happens so fast. How quick it goes by when you lose a parent.
It does. It does. And I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things we didn't ask last time when you were on is what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have for you is you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
That could be scary.
That could be, but we can also edit it if need be. So, last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Last meal? Baked ziti or eggplant parmesan?
How about both?
Both with pizza.
Favorite smell?
Lemons.
All-time favorite sport?
Playing or watching?
Either or.
Love playing basketball.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
I grew up watching the Yankees, but I would not say they're my all-time favorite team. My all-time favorite team is the teams that I get to work with.
That's a good answer. Very politically correct. Do you have an all-time favorite movie?
Rocky.
Great flick.
I wrote my college essay
on Rocky
that I don't think it got me into Cornell. They were probably reading and going like, is this guy serious? But it definitely was something I wrote about that inspired me.
All-time favorite author?
That's hard. Like one favorite author. I would say author, but Erwin McManus is a pastor who writes a lot of books, but his sermons are what are my favorites and inspire me. So I want to make sure I say that. As an author, John Ortberg, Donald Miller, they're all up there.
Do you have a favorite app on your phone?
Oh, Max Lucado as well. Lucado.
You just had him on your show too.
Yeah,
as well.
I just had him on my podcast. Here I am interviewing him, and he winds up asking me questions on the interview. Like he sees my lacrosse stick in the back. He's like, "Tell me about that stick." And then I start talking about it, and he says, "Did you enjoy playing?" Like he's the nicest guy in the world. Like, caring more about me. Like, Chris, I need to be more like that.
Well, I think we all do. It's probably a great person to follow.
Yeah, Max Lucado, no doubt. And his new book actually just came out called You Are Never Alone. Incredible.
What's your favorite app that you have on your phone?
My favorite app, definitely Twitter.
And what is the background picture on your phone?
It's my wife and our 2 kids and me all together for a New Year's photo.
Awesome. And what is your all-time favorite book?
That I've written?
Either you've written or if you have a favorite that someone else has written.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's pick. I don't have one all-time favorite book that I've read. So many. I mean, there are so many close ones and good ones. Let's say Traveling Light by Max Lucado is one of my all-time favorite books.
And now I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your all-time favorite Jon Gordon book?
That I've written, definitely Training Camp is my favorite. People say The Energy Bus is my obviously most popular. The Carpenter, they say, is my best written book, but I would say Training Camp is my favorite.
And do you have an all-time favorite quote, either yours or somebody else's?
Being positive doesn't just make you better. It makes everyone around you better. I would also say optimism is a competitive advantage is one of my favorite ones. And definitely don't listen to yourself. Talk to yourself.
That is so important, and your wife touched on that, and I think that's so key, especially during these challenging times. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, what's the best way for them to follow you, connect with you, but also where can they get all of your books?
They can go to jongordon.com, Jon Gordon.com, Twitter at JON-Gordon11, Instagram is at JON-Gordon11 as well. So I'm on there and Facebook as well. But JON-Gordon.com, you go there, all the books are there. Also on Amazon and everything else.
And then last question we have for you is the same question we ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Parting words. Duke University did a study on optimists. They found that they worked harder, got paid more, and were more likely to succeed in business and sports. And what they found was that these optimists, because they believed in a brighter and better future, they then took the actions necessary to create it. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so what you believe determines what you create. So every day you get up, you can rise and shine or rise and whine. I want to encourage you to rise and shine and create the future.
Absolutely. Perfect message to end today's episode. I truly appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you for listening to episode number 300. Jon shared some really powerful stuff with us today. The word encourage is something I think we all need to say, hear, show, and ultimately do. I think we can all encourage others more. Where there is a void, negativity will fill it. Such a powerful and important quote. As Jon's parting words were a perfect ending to today's episode, I would like to repeat them one more time. Rise and shine and create the future.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.